Hello everyone, I'm Shannon Kelly, Social Media Manager at the Toronto Real Estate Board.
And I'm Jason Mercer, the Toronto Real Estate Board's Senior Manager of Market Analysis.
Now Jason, can you tell us how the market performed in February?
Sure. Residential sales through the Toronto MLS system in February amounted to 5,759. Now this number was down by about 15% in comparison to February of 2012. But it is important to note that 2012 was a leap year with 29 days in February. And so if we strip out the 29th day from February in 2012 and do a 28-day to 28-day year-over-year comparison, we find that sales were down more in the neighborhood of 10.5% on a year-over-year basis. Now, it's important to note that it appears that some households are still being affected by the stricter mortgage lending guidelines that came into effect in the second half of 2012. And so some home buyers are still on the sidelines as they're waiting for some combination of saving up a larger down payment, seeing their incomes increase, or reassessing where they want to live, both in terms of home type and geography in the Greater Toronto Area.
Thanks, Jason. Now that explained a lot about sales, but one thing you continue to mention is that you see prices increasing in 2013. How did price hold up last month?
The average selling price through the Toronto MLS system was $510,580 in February, and this was up by about 2% in comparison to February of 2012. But it's important to note that this year-over-year rate of increase slowed down a bit in comparison to what we saw in January. And there's a key reason for that, and it relates to the mix of single-detached homes sold in the City of Toronto this year compared to last. Specifically, when we look at the luxury market, homes sold over $2 million. And we saw a smaller share this year compared to February 2012 of those higher priced homes. And the reason for this gets back to government policy. And number one, the new stricter mortgage lending guidelines that we've already talked about also included a provision whereby homes sold for over $1 million were not eligible for government-backed mortgages. And at the same time in the City of Toronto, it's also important to point out that we have the additional upfront land transfer tax, which may have served to change people's minds in terms of, number one, whether they wanted to purchase a house over that $1 million mark instead of, say, renovating. And also on the listing side, it also probably served to change some households' minds as to whether they wanted to list their home for sale in the first place and buy another home rather than renovate as well.
So with all of this in mind, Jason, do you still expect the average selling price to continue to grow this year?
I do. Even though we saw a lower pace of price growth in February, we're seeing tight enough market conditions, especially in the low-rise segment of the market, to see price growth coming in at somewhere between 3% and 4% on an annual basis. And so right now, my price outlook is for $515,000 on average, and that would be up by about 3.5% in comparison to 2012 as a whole. And it's interesting, if we look at the MLS Home Price Index, which strips out those types of mix issues that we had in February, we see that the overall composite index was up by over 3% in comparison to last year. And so this supports the view that we're going to continue to see price growth in and around that 3 to 4% range this year.
Thanks so much, Jason. Now, over this month, you can still connect with us on social media, on Twitter at TREB Home, as well as on Facebook. And until next time, have yourself a great month.